Hello, first grade friends, and welcome back to Library Class at Home with Mr. S. We have been reading Stuart Little, written by E.B. White. In the last chapter, Stuart met a beautiful bird and maybe instantly fell in love. And then when the bird was sleeping, he was worried that the cat, Snowbell, was going to come and eat her. So he got his little bow and arrow and he climbed up there to defend his bird friend. So chapter 9 is where we're at. It's called A Narrow Escape. Margallo liked it so well at the Littles' house, she decided to stay for a while instead of returning to the open country. She and Stuart became fast friends, and as the days passed, it seemed to Stuart that she grew more and more beautiful. He hoped she would never go away from him. One day, when Stuart had recovered from his bronchitis, he took his new skates and put on his ski pants and went out to look for an ice pond. He didn't get far. The minute he stepped out into the street, he saw an Irish terrier, so he had to shimmy up an iron gate and jump into a garbage can, where he hid in a grove of old celery. While he was there, waiting for the dog to go away, a garbage truck drove up the curb and two men picked up the can. Stuart felt himself being hoisted high in the air. He peered over the side and saw that in another instant he and everything in the can would be dumped into the big truck. "Oh no, if I jump now I'll really hurt myself," thought Stuart. So he ducked back into the can and waited. The men threw the can with a loud bump into the truck, where another man grabbed it, turned it upside down, and shook everything out of it. Stuart landed on his head, buried 2 feet deep in wet, slippery garbage. All around him was garbage, smelling strong. Under him, over him, on all 4 sides of him, garbage. Just an enormous world of garbage and trash and smell. It was a messy spot to be in. He had egg in his pants, butter on his hat, gravy on his shirt, orange pulp in his ear, and a banana peel wrapped around his waist. Still hanging onto his skates, Stuart tried to make his way up to the surface of the garbage, but the footing was bad. He climbed a pile of coffee grounds, but near the top the grounds gave way under him and he slid down and landed in a pool of leftover rice pudding. "I bet I'm going to be sick to my stomach before I get out of this," said Stuart. He was anxious to work his way up to the top of the pile because he was afraid of being squished by the next can of garbage. When at last he did succeed in getting to the surface, tired and smelly, he saw that the truck was not making any more collections, but was rumbling rapidly along. Stuart glanced up at the sun. We're going east," he said to himself. "I wonder what that means." Oh boy. There was no way for him to get out of the truck. The sides were too high. He just had to wait. When the truck arrived at the East River, which borders New York City on the east, and which is a rather dirty but useful river, the driver drove out onto the pier and backed up to a garbage scow. That's a kind of boat. A garbage scow, and dumped his load. Stuart went crashing and slithering along with everything else and hit his head so hard that he fainted and lay quite still. He lay that way for almost an hour, and when he recovered his senses, he looked around him and saw nothing but water. The garbage scow was being towed out to sea. "Well," thought Stuart, "this is about the worst thing that could happen to anybody. I guess this will be my last ride." For he knew that the garbage would be towed 20 miles out and dumped into the Atlantic Ocean. "I guess there's nothing I can do about it," he thought hopelessly. "I'll just have to sit here bravely. But I wish it didn't have to be with eggs on my pants and butter on my head and gravy on my shirt and orange pulp in my ear and a banana peel wrapped around my middle." Stuart started to feel sad, and he began to think of his home, of his father and mother and brother, and of Margallo and Snowbell, and how he loved them all. Well, all but Snowbell. And what a pleasant place his home was, especially in the early morning with the light just coming in through the curtains and the household stirring and waking. The tears came into his eyes when he realized he would never see them again. He was still sobbing when a small voice behind him whispered, "Stuart!" He looked around, and through his tears, there, sitting on a pile of Brussels sprouts, was Margallo. "Margallo," said Stuart, "how did you get here?" "Well," said the bird, "I was looking out the window this morning when you left home, and I happened to see you get dumped into the garbage truck. So I flew out the window and followed the truck, thinking you might need help." "I've never been so glad to see anybody in all my life," said Stuart. "But how are you going to help me?" "Well, I think that if you hang on to my feet," said Margallo, "I can fly ashore with you. It's worth trying anyway. How much do you weigh?" 3.5 ounces, said Stuart. "With your clothes on," said Margallo. "Certainly," said Stuart modestly. Then I think I can carry you all right." "Suppose I get dizzy," said Stuart. "Well, don't look down," said Margallo. "Then you won't get dizzy." "Suppose I get sick in my stomach." "Well, then you'll just have to throw up," said the bird. "Anything is better than being stuck out here on this boat." "Yes, that's true," Stuart agreed. "Hang on, then. We may as well get started." Stuart tucked his skates into his shirt and stepped gingerly onto a tuft of old lettuce and took a firm grip on Margallo's ankles. "All ready," he cried. With a flutter of wings, Margallo rose into the sky, carrying Stuart along. Together, they flew out over the ocean and headed towards home. And here is a picture of Margallo carrying Stuart. Pretty cool. "Phew," said Margallo when they were high in the air. "Oh, Stuart, you smell awful." "I know I do," he said gloomily. "I hope it isn't making you feel bad." "Whew, I can hardly breathe," she said, "and my heart is pounding. Isn't there something you could do to make yourself lighter?" "Well, I guess I could drop these ice skates," said Stuart. "Goodness me," the little bird said. I didn't know you had skates hidden in your shirt. Toss those heavy skates away quickly or we'll both come down into the ocean." Stuart threw his skates away and watched them fall down, down, till they disappeared into the gray waves below. "That's better," said Margallo. "Now we're all right. I can see the towers and chimneys of New York." 15 minutes later, they flew in through the open window of the Littles' living room and landed right on the Boston Fern. Mrs. Little, who had left the window open when she missed Margallo, was glad to see them back, for she was beginning to worry. When she heard what happened, how near she had come to losing her son, she took Stuart in her hand, even though her clothes smelled nasty, and kissed him. Then she went upstairs to take a bath, and sent George out to take Stuart's clothes to the cleaner. "What was it like out there in the Atlantic Ocean?" inquired Mr. Little, who had never been very far from home. So Stuart and Margallo told all about the ocean and the gray waves curling with the white crests and the gulls in the sky and the channel buoys and the ships and the tugs and the wind making sound in your ears. Mr. Little sighed and said someday he hoped to get away from business long enough to see all those fine things. Everyone thanked Margallo for saving Stuart's life, and at supper time Mrs. Little presented her with a tiny cake which had seeds sprinkled on the top. And that, boys and girls, is the end of chapter 9. Check it out. There's Margallo and the cake with the seeds on it. Wow, whew, that was exciting. Stuart Little sure has an exciting life. He was captaining a boat. He ran away from the cat. He went down into the drain, if you remember, to recover a ring, and then he got thrown out with the garbage and swept out to sea, but thankfully Margallo saved him. So that was chapter 9, boys and girls. Tell me what you think of it. Tell me if you thought it was exciting. Leave me a comment on my Google Classroom page, and don't forget to click the Turned In button so I know you've seen it. Tomorrow we are going to read chapter 10. Chapter 10 is called Springtime, which is really cool because we are having springtime outside right now. So check back tomorrow, boys and girls, for another exciting chapter of Stuart Little. I hope everybody's being safe and keeping your hands washed. I'll see you all tomorrow.